My Aunt Rose lived across the street, and she would always come over once a week, or my mother would go over there to visit my Aunt Rose, and we would tag along, you know. And then we had hard help, and they always would stay. We always had to cook dinner for them. And then in the summertime, I guess it was August, we would do the thrashing, do the wheat and wheat and rye or whatever. And my mother would have to have a big dinner for all those people that came and did the thrashing. So we all had to help with that. And that might have been maybe 20 people that she had to feed. She always had a fried chicken. She made good fried chicken, my mother did, because the chickens were nice and young and they were really good eating. And so we had help with the canning, made tomatoes, juice and peaches, green beans, corn, and then in the fall we raised tobacco. We had to help strip the tobacco and and hang that and cut it and hang that and strip it. In November it was.
There's a lot of stonework around here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Give me close to a year of when it was done and who done it.
Between 45 and 49 in that era, yeah. Mm-hmm. The steps going down here, the rails on the side was built by George Bowden, and those big posts or pillars, he did those. And I don't know, he took him several weeks to do this, and he stayed with us while that was going on. When he got finished, there's a circle to the left of the stairs going down. Mm-hmm. Well, he says, I'm going to build that for Mary, for her keeping me. So he stayed another week and built that. It only took him 2 days, but he stayed a week.
Oh, so he stayed here while he did the work.
Yes, and
he got fed and he got room and board.
Right. Tiny worked with him a lot, and I worked with him. And old George left here, and Tiny went with him, not to stay, but to do jobs someplace. And they did a lot of it in Fort Mitchell. And so we'd go down in the creek, and we'd get the stone out and haul them over in that Kenton County someplace, wherever they'd be working. Mm-hmm. And then we'd go back in the woods.
There you go, in the woods. He told me
in
about
the woods.
The wood, yeah.
And we'd get the ones with all the
waterworks in it.
Well, water doesn't do that. It's the roots that do that.
The carving in the rock?
Yeah.
The channels in the rock?
Uh-huh.
The roots did that?
Yeah, because they'd be falling down in the bank right out from under trees.
Okay.
So I know everybody says that it's the water cut, but to me it's the roots.
Form them canals and form them a little...
Yeah,
okay.
And then Tiny built all these walls around here. And I don't think they'll ever fall down or fall in either.
Well, they're needing some working on now. They're needing some repair work now. I haven't got around to that yet.
Yeah, well, look how many years that is.
I know, but
quite a few.
I wish it would last another 20 years.
But
so Tiny and George Bowden?
Yeah. Well, and then Tiny went for himself doing stonework. Mm-hmm. And I was working in a garage, and then we'd come home at night and we'd go load up a truckload of stone, and the next morning early I would take it and empty it, and then I'd drive the truck back to where I was working.
So when you needed gravel for the driveways, where did you get that stone at? Did you get that out of the creek? Or?
We hauled the rock out, and then we got a guy with a stone crusher to crush it, and we'd throw it in, and it chomp, chomp, chomp.
Was that Elmer Lamar?
Yeah, it was his rig.
Okay.
And I eventually run that for him. I'd go out and do the work.
So you knapped rock, and then you had a stone crusher that made the gravel for the rock. Mm-hmm. And how often would you do that?
Not too often. We only had to do it once or twice. But we got down there and kept it water, so water would drain off of it. No puddles to where you go through and throw the rock. Mm-hmm. We worked on it a lot. My Uncle John next door, he he worked with us on it, you know, because it was a dual driveway for two farms. So it worked out real nice, except for the hillside here coming up. You had to get out there when it was raining and clean out the water breaks.
And they're still there.
They're still there.
They're still there.
Yeah, right.
Well, my sister Betty and I, we were always, and Millie, us three would play together. We would go sled riding in the wintertime down there behind the barn. And then when the manure pile would be frozen over, we would blindfold each other. Then we would take them up on the manure pile, but it was frozen. And then we said, guess where you're at, you know. Then we would play toss ball over one of the roofs, and we called Andy over and Andy back, that game. And different games we just played among ourselves. We had cousins that lived across the way, but they were older than I was. So played more or less with our sisters, yeah.
Well, we would always play out there on the sidewalk, and that little porch out there, you know, Betty and Irma and I, we would always play. And we would have funerals, and we'd have weddings, and then, you know, and then that little porch out there on the side, that was our little chapel. You know? So that's how we played. We played among our, you know, we had to make up our own little things to play, you know, but we were always having weddings.
Cousin Hilda said I cried a lot, and my mother would have to carry me down the steps when I went to the first grade. I would cry every morning, and she had to give me a penny so I would quit crying. And then I remember when my mother would walk to the mailbox, and she would be way ahead of me, and I would be way behind, and I would keep crying. I'd sit there and kick my legs and cry for her to stop and come back and get me. Well, one time my Aunt Rose was over visiting. She lived across the way, and I had a new dress, and I ran up the steps to my mother's bedroom to pick up the show of my dress. Well, I stumbled and bit my tongue almost halfway off. So I had to, for the last, I don't know how long it lasted, but I had to drink everything out of a straw. And then one other time, we always went barefoot, never wore shoes in the summertime. And then I stepped on a big rusty nail that had a board in it. So my mother just pulled it out and soaked my foot in Lysol water. And we all survived, yes, yes.
And the horses had names?
Oh yeah, every one of them had names. And at one time, I never will forget it, I guess. One horse, she was about 5-6 years old, and she went blind. And we had these walls around here, so we'd bring her up here in the yard and turn her loose. And she never did know, like, if you were working her, G and haw, which is right and left, you know. And she got up here and was blind, and she knew them walls were there, but she'd get down on that bank right above them walls, and we'd yell at her and tell her to go G, and she'd turn and go up the hill. So
before she stepped over the wall.
Yeah, she never did get
but
on the wall.
She'd always turn her right or
She'd
left.
always come back.
Huh.
Yeah, and she'd come up on the flat here.
What kind of horse was that? Was it
Just
a Percheron? Was it a black horse?
No, it wasn't a Percheron. It was she was a bay. You know, they're just horses to me. I'd break them and work them and get them working real good and work as a team and teach them G and haw, and my dad would sell them. That'd make me so mad sometimes.
Now, the little house in the back.
Yeah. We always had somebody living in that little house. Sometimes they worked for us, sometimes they didn't. And at one time, they didn't work for us, but they had a mean dog. And we'd go up there to feed the cows, and the dog would get after us. So we had a fellow lived with us, and he helped my dad when he went out and baled hay and stuff. He got me and Brother Irvin and says, "Let's take a little walk." we walked back there just after dark. That dog come down, he took shotgun with him. That dog came down, he bit the end of the gun, and you can imagine the rest. So we drug it down over the hill and got rid of it. But those people never did say nothing about that. Whether they liked it or disliked it, they never mentioned that dog anymore. But we never got bit anymore either.